Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante. My name is Graham Elwood, back here in the Political Vigilante studios at our world headquarters, apart from reporting from Australia, which was a fantastic tour. Thank you to everybody that came out to those shows. I'm joined here today by Taylor Hudak, who is a spokesperson for Suzie Dawson's 1 versus 5i campaign. Taylor, thanks for doing the show today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you. So you've been working basically with Suzie Dawson's 1 versus 5i campaign, which has been goes live every Sunday at 4:30 Pacific, and I've even the stream has happened right here on my channel. For those of you who don't know what it is, I'm going to just show you a couple minutes of a video that Suzie put together that helps kind of explain who she is and what this is all about, and then Taylor will go into more detail with you.
Hi, my name is Suzie. I'm an activist and a journalist from Auckland, New Zealand. For years, I've worked on controversial issues like the corruption of our intelligence agencies. I was severely targeted as a result of my work. This led to my articles being amplified by the world's most accomplished publisher. In 2016, I made a documentary about how and why I was forced to leave my country. I have now sought refuge in Russia, and my situation has become public.
On 882 6PR, the voice of Perth.
It's 12:30 right now, and Tony with you, and I'm really happy we finally got through to Moscow to my friend over there, Suzie Dawson.
You're listening to a 95BFM podcast.
Suzie Dawson is a Kiwi activist and journalist who worked as a member of Occupy Auckland's media team at that time. Now, 5 years later, and following involvement in GCSB and TPPA opposition, she's seeking asylum in Russia, alleging she has been spied on, harassed and threatened by the police.
Welcome back to The Wire. Now, finally on the show today, last week it was announced that Suzie Dawson will be the new leader of the Internet Party.
Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. We have a special guest with us. It's Suzie Dawson. She's an activist, journalist, former party leader and current president of the Internet Party.
Suzie Dawson, an activist and citizen journalist currently seeking asylum in Moscow. Suzie has written extensively on surveillance and the deep state and claims it's not safe for her in New Zealand.
My name is Craig Tuck. I'm a lawyer from New Zealand. I act in the area of international human rights. I act for Suzie Dawson, along with a group of other lawyers throughout the world who act for journalists and dissenters in high-profile cases, including the case of Julian Assange. As far back as 2012, Suzie has been trying to warn New Zealanders and other citizens around the world about state targeting and surveillance of citizens and the methods being used to do it.
Surveillance in New Zealand, it's now so widespread, it's not an issue of police going and getting a warrant and doing an investigation and then it all coming out in court. The vast majority of the surveillance that's undertaken is never going to be aired in a courtroom. And by that I'm talking about cell phone technologies, I'm talking about lawful interception is the term that the companies that do this like to use. There is a corporation in Wellington, New Zealand called SSI Corp, and you can Google them and you can look at their website. And on their website, they're so good as to explain at length exactly what they do and how legal it is for them to do it. And essentially, they can intercept virtually any communication. If they have someone at range, they can hear your actual conversations, but also through cell phones, they can essentially turn them into microphones and hear any conversation that's had within the vicinity. They can see your text messages, they can see what photos are on your phone, they can see what files are on your phone, they can read your emails, they can just intercept all kinds of information.
Any intelligence service in the world that has significant funding and a real technological research team can own that phone the minute it connects to their network. As soon as you turn it on, it can be theirs. They can turn it into a microphone, they can take pictures from it, they can take the data off of it. But it's important to understand that these things are typically done on a targeted basis.
Not only was Suzie essentially blowing a whistle on state-level spying, She was naming the precise entities that years later.
So that may be a good place to
Okay, so yeah, let's so that sort of gives the viewers an overview of who Suzie Dawson is. Some of you who watch the show, you know who she is. You've seen me interview her, and you know, I've been involved with Unity for Jay, but she has taken on in the last month or so, basically, she's going to court against the intelligence community. Can you elaborate on what the whole, what she's in taking on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So the One versus 5i campaign, which you could find at oneversus5i.com, is all about one woman, Kiwi journalist and activist Suzie Dawson, taking on the Five Eyes. Now, the Five Eyes is an interconnected network of intelligence agencies among 5 Western countries, including the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, which is Suzie's country of origin. Additionally, this campaign is about empowering Suzie financially to fight against these intelligence agencies in a court of law.
So it's really, I mean, this is pretty bold for one person to take on suing 5 countries and, you know.
Well, it is bold, but it is bold. However, Suzie is being represented by international human rights attorney Craig Tuck. Craig Tuck is also a member of Julian Assange's legal team, and attorney Tuck, in fact, traveled from New Zealand to Moscow, Russia, where Suzie is located right now, to review the facts of her case. Now, attorney Tuck also said that if Suzie's asylum is not granted, the system is broken. And that is what she is also doing, is she is reseeking temporary asylum in Moscow, Russia, and we are expecting a decision to be made very soon.
So what is Suzie hoping to accomplish with this?
So before I get into exactly what she wants to accomplish, I do want to touch on just about Suzie Dawson and her work and why she specifically is fighting against these intelligence agencies in a court of law, and also why she had to seek asylum in Russia to begin with. So this goes back to 2012. Suzie Dawson was a prominent member of the Occupy Auckland and Occupy New Zealand movements. We know that the Occupy Wall Street movement worldwide was actually targeted by the FBI and the DHS at the direction of the White House. And at this time, Suzie also noticed that the mainstream media, the corporate media, was not covering the Occupy movement, their demonstrations and protests as frequently as they should. So she took it upon herself to document what was happening, and she kind of became a journalist on accident at this time. As she was doing this work.
I want to interject, and as it should be noted, too, that when they did cover Occupy Wall Street, the movement, at least here in the States, their coverage of it was, oh, it's a bunch of dumb kids who don't know what they're doing. They have no point, no focus. And they were never really discussing what the protest was about, because, of course, the corporate media is a part of what they're protesting, because they're just inherently full of shit. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's true. Also, at this time, Suzie learned that the FBI, American intelligence, was operating on New Zealand soil during these protests. And she thought to herself, and rightfully so, what right does the FBI have to be meddling in the internal affairs of another country, being New Zealand? So she started to document this. And as you would expect, this, of course, angered and upset many powerful people, specifically the intelligence agencies. And she continued to do this work and to, engage in her activism and publish information and articles that really exposed the corruption of the intelligence agencies. And as a result of that, Suzie became a target of these intelligence agencies that she was exposing. Like many whistleblowers, activists, journalists, and political dissidents around the world, Suzie was subjected to targeting. And it eventually became so severe that she had to leave her country of origin, which is New Zealand, and seek refuge and seek asylum or temporary asylum in Moscow, Russia.
So when you say severe, what are the specifically, how did they severely target her when she was in New Zealand?
Absolutely. So what happened is at first it didn't start out so severe, actually. Her home was just being broken into, her items were being stolen, her vehicle was tampered with. And as she continued to do her work, despite all of this, the targeting grew more severe, and threats were made on her life, and eventually even attempts were made on her life. So she had no choice but to leave New Zealand. This was a very difficult decision that she had to make. And Suzie is also being represented by a Russian asylum attorney. And he said, quote, that any one thing that Suzie has experienced can be explained another way, but all of it cannot be.
Right, because someone could say, well, anyone could have their home broken into or their car malfunctions. Boy, that happens to everybody. What proof does she have that she was specifically targeted by the intelligence community?
I'm glad that you bring that up, because throughout all of this and as this was happening, Suzie was documenting on social media everything that she was experiencing. And also in 2018, an official State Services Commission report was released, and it revealed that New Zealand law enforcement and officials were employing these private companies to surveil New Zealand citizens. While the 6 years prior, Suzie Dawson was documenting this, and she was warning New Zealand citizens that this was happening to people. And so she was vindicated in 2018 when this official report came out. Specifically, it was Thompson and Clark Investigations Limited that was spying on people at the direction of New Zealand law enforcement and officials. Also, like I said, Suzie is not the only one that has been experiencing this level of targeting. Suzie was also a very active member in the anti-TPPA movement, and while she was in New Zealand, and also at the same time, another person who she did not know, who is in America, who happened to be a very active member, a part of the same movement against the TPPA, was experiencing targeting just like Suzie. And again, these two women did not know each other, and they were in different countries on the opposite sides of the world. Both of them found each other because they realized they were being subjected to the same forms of targeting. So this really shows the interconnectedness and the collaborative effort on behalf of the intelligence agencies to target people.
Yeah, and I think some of the stuff that Suzie has uncovered that some of my viewers might not be aware of is how private intelligence agencies like this one you brought up, they're getting funding. So like anything, like the private prison industry, the way they make profit is by having prisoners, so they need to go out and get prisoners. And they need to help write laws that jail more people so that they make more of a profit. So is the case with private intelligence, where they're like, well, we need to survey more people. We can't, if there's the CIA and MI6 and organizations like that, well, they're taking care of what? They're going after the, quote, bad guys, where these private agencies now have a financial incentive to go after its own citizens, correct?
You are correct in that. So what has happened is that the surveillance industry and the spying industry, they have a profit motive now, and they have monetized data collection. And in order to gain profits, you have to have growth, right? And in order to have growth, you have to broaden the scope of the people that you are surveilling and targeting and spying on in order to make money. So eventually it is going to be everybody that is being surveilled and spied on. I do want to touch on one point I was making earlier about this State Services Commission report in 2018. Since then, just recently, in fact, someone that Suzie was working with very closely in New Zealand had a successful lawsuit against the New Zealand police and against the New Zealand authorities for spying. This is the third lawsuit that a person has won. So there absolutely is hope in this case, and that sets a legal precedent for Suzie's case. And the reason she's also taking these intelligence agencies on is because it allows for a unique and special opportunity to set an important legal precedent. so that these intelligence agencies can no longer be targeting and harassing people and destroying their lives just because they hold viewpoints and because their work is threatening to the powers at hand.
Well, gee, this is confusing. I thought America was the land of the free and only the Russians and the Chinese did bad things.
Well, if you are, Suzie puts it best when she says that if you are a journalist and something bad happens to you, if you are killed or you are hurt or being targeted severely, you better hope that you are from Russia, because that is the only way that the American corporate media or any corporate media is going to care what happened to you or ever talk about what happened to you or even say your name. You better hear from Russia. So there's a lot of talk about how Russia is so terrible to journalists, when in fact the United States has really been hindering free speech. We see that with the case of Julian Assange right now. We've seen that with other cases. Serena Shim, her case wasn't even investigated. She was an American journalist who was killed.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
it's a fallacy.
We have such a one-sided view here in America. I mean, it was talking to Suzie Dawson over a year ago where I learned about Serena Shim, because the corporate media here I didn't know anything about Serena Shim until Suzie Dawson told me. For the viewers who maybe not clear who Serena Shim is, she was an American working for, I believe, Press TV, and she uncovered that the United States was taking ISIS troops through a base in Turkey. And she uncovered this, and when she uncovered this, she had a weird car accident that was never, where she died. It was never investigated. Nobody ever looked at it. And then when Khashoggi gets brutally murdered and cut up by our allies, the Saudi Arabians, there's all this hand-wringing, and all this is so awful in the American media, but not one peep, not one mention of Serena Shim, not to mention the fact that Julian Assange is basically being, they're trying to kill him. Chelsea Manning was, jailed and tortured under Obama for revealing war crimes of the United States military. And the United States, I was just in Australia, and you go outside of this country, you realize we are very conservative. We don't have this we have a free society to go shopping. We have a free society to choose what kind of fast food we want to buy, or what video game we want to buy, or what bullshit social media we want to get mad about some stupid TV show about. But we don't have real freedoms in this country. They've been completely eviscerated. And the fact that Americans aren't up in arms about what's happening to Julian Assange, it just shows you how effective the ruling class has been at distracting us and dividing us and making us think that that this is all acceptable behavior.
Exactly. It's very, very unfortunate. I mean, if you're an American journalist and something happens to you, your name is just not going to be mentioned. There's going to be lies perpetrated about what happened to you, because we have this idea in the West that we have a freedom of the press, and we just do not. So that's a really important point of this campaign as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I mentioned him also, Gary Webb, who uncovered that the CIA was bringing in, crack cocaine through Iran-Contra and all that stuff. And he, the official police report was that he committed suicide by shooting himself in the head twice, which was just a signal to everybody, to journalists especially: keep your mouths shut or you're going to shoot yourself in the head twice. I mean, that's part of what I think the Julian Assange and the Chelsea Manning thing is like, hey, you better keep your mouths shut or we're going to lock you up.
Yeah, and on the subject of Julian Assange, I mean, he circulated Suzie's work when he was still active on Twitter. Up until his internet access was cut off since 2014, he was promoting her work. So her associations with Julian Assange and her associations with Kim.com made her even more of a target and more of a threat to these intelligence agencies. And that is why they really went after her very severely, also because of these connections that she had.
So how can people help?
Before we do get to that, I want to talk about what it is that the Five Eyes do.
Oh, okay.
And why people should care about this. because I think many people may be hearing this and thinking, oh, this doesn't affect me because I'm not a journalist, I'm not an activist, or I'm not a political dissident, or at least not vocal about having adversarial political views or views that are contradictory to what is acceptable in the corporate media. Now, your audience may be a little bit different with that, but for anybody that's watching, I want you all to know that this absolutely does impact you. And the reason is, if we look within the past 20 years, we have seen the surveillance state increase dramatically at an alarmingly fast rate. And there is no reason to believe that it's ever going to slow down unless we hold these agencies to account with campaigns like this one, the One versus Five Eye campaign. So it's really important to remember that eventually this will impact everybody, and it already does in certain ways. But because there is a profit motive associated with all of this, everybody is going to be heavily surveilled in order for these agencies and companies to be making money off of this. Also, this is where it gets a little bit sadistic in a way and very concerning. It's absolutely a fallacy to say that it's just journalists and activists that are targeted. The 2018 State Services Commission report revealed that even historic state child abuse claimants, as well as earthquake insurance claimants, were being targeted by the government. So imagine that your house is damaged in a natural disaster, in an earthquake, you file an insurance claim in trying to seek some sort of, help or compensation for this, and you're being targeted by the government because of that. That's what's happening.
You're even saying that child abuse, people making child abuse claims get targeted?
Yes, so yes, you're correct. It's anybody that will come in contact with government agencies who may be a potential threat to their power or status is subject to potentially be targeted for that.
And how do they target these people?
Well, again, it's in various ways. It could start out very small, as in breaking into homes, or just stealing items, or just making your life just inconvenient in so many ways. But it varies depending upon your threat level to these agencies. It really depends on, if you're willing to, I guess, stop doing this sort of work or, forget the claim, then they'll maybe sort of back off. But if you continue to do your work, of course, the threats and the targeting is going to become even more severe, because they hope they do that to deter you from taking action.
Okay. And what are the names of some of these private intelligence organizations?
Well, Thompson and Clark Investigations Limited specifically was addressed in the State Services Commission report. And Suzie describes this really well with a model that she calls the reverse wedding cake. It's basically a reverse pyramid. This is the global network model. And basically at the very top of that is the NSA. It's the largest section because they collect all the data from all of the countries beneath it who have signed on to these partnership agreements and these eyes agreements. Because there's many eyes. There's not just the 5 eyes. There's the 43 eyes, the 7 eyes, the 9 eyes, the 14 eyes. There's many of them. So at the top of this, the biggest part of this reverse wedding cake is the NSA, because they have all of the data that they kind of like suck up from the countries that sign on to these agreements that are beneath them. And then the NSA goes ahead and decides what information is valuable to the country's law enforcement and authorities there, and then filters back down that information, but they don't provide them with all of the data.
Okay. So then...
And customers is basically what I'm trying to get at. And the customers could be the Department of Agriculture. It could be even private companies. And they basically succumb to their customers' wishes for whatever type of data that they're seeking to receive.
Right. Okay. Well, this is important for people to realize, because it's the thing I talk a lot about on the show, not just with the intelligence community, but anything. If you think it can't happen to you, you're wrong. I mean, I've talked about this with with fracking or pipelines or anything like that in certain states where people are really fighting them. I've done a lot of videos about, in, let's say specifically Colorado, because I have a viewer, Tim Stack, who sends me this information about pipelines and stuff, and how the oil lobby has bought favor with politicians in the state of Colorado. And I say, if you don't think that can happen in your state, you're wrong. The Keystone Pipeline just spilled 380,000 gallons. And it's the same thing in, I believe, North Dakota. It's the same thing, though, with the intelligence community. If you speak up about anything, if they don't like what you're saying, they'll come get you. I mean, they can hassle you in any way, shape, or form. And we don't have, I mean, our civil liberties have been thrown out the door thanks to Bush, and then it was even intensified by Obama because it's, terrorism. They used terrorism to basically just eviscerate the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
You're exactly right. They target people under the false guise of terrorism, when in reality, these are just peaceful activists and peaceful people whose actions or journalistic work is a threat to the powers at hand. And again, this is no longer up for debate. It is a fact that they are controlling and manipulating every aspect of human society, including political, governmental, educational. The media as well is completely infiltrated. And we know this because their own documents tell us this. And Edward Snowden put it best when he famously said that, quote, these programs were never about terrorism. They're about economic spying, social control, and diplomatic manipulation.
Right.
They are about power, end quote. That's from Snowden, an NSA whistleblower who was in this group of people and who worked with them and understands how these programs work. So again, this is a fact. This is happening. And that is what we are seeking to do with this campaign, is to hold these agencies accountable for doing this and for targeting people, because it's unacceptable and it's quite immoral, to be honest. So we need Suzie. We need her work. Her work is extremely valuable. We can learn so much from her and from people like Julian Assange and others who have been targeted by the intelligence agencies. That's Kim.com, John Kiriakou, Chelsea Manning, so many of these wonderful, brilliant people. And Suzie is one of these people, and we need her and we need to fight for her. And that's what this campaign is all about. And also, like I said earlier, it does allow for an important legal precedent to be set to ensure that this doesn't continue, because it is only going to get worse.
Yeah, so Suzie's done amazing work, and this is another thing that she's doing, which is impressive, because like setting this legal precedent, as you say, could really benefit all of us for the better. So where can people get involved and help with Suzie's? I know she's got legal costs and stuff like that. How can people get involved?
Yes, she does. So I would encourage everybody to please follow the campaign on Twitter at the number 1, the letters VI, the numbers VS, or at the number 1, the letters VS, the number 5, the letter I. And then you can also donate to the campaign at oneversus5i.com/donate. It's really important to remember that we can't vote these members of these intelligence agencies into office, and we can't vote them out. They know that, and they abuse that. But we can vote against them with our dollars by contributing to her campaign. So if you are able to do so, it is greatly appreciated and very beneficial to this cause. And if you can't, that's completely understandable. Not everybody has the luxury of being able to do that. So it's important to also just bring awareness to this campaign and share the link on social media. And there's also a Facebook page, facebook.com/the number 1, the letters VS, the number 5, the letter I. I got it right that time. And it's a great way to get involved if you're more active on the Facebook platform.
Yeah. So
and we also assembled a really important and really special group of people on a Discord server. So if you want to work with Suzie directly, you can do so by going to oneversus5i.com/Discord.
That's fantastic. And I say to the viewers of the show all the time how to get involved and get involved on a local level, on an independent level. But this is a cause to get behind because, as Taylor just said, the intelligence, it's its own state and it can't be voted out. We can't vote out the CIA. We can't vote down their funding. We can't vote down the NSA. Politicians are just sort of, professional wrestling characters that get shuffled in and out with these two ridiculous parties that both serve the ruling class, and which is the CIA does this. And so it's a great way for everybody to get involved. And I understand too, as I say on this show, if money's tight, there's so many free ways to support, which is like push out Suzie's videos, watch them, get involved. And that's a great way to help out. So go to all those websites. I'll put the link in the show notes below for the One versus 5i website so you can help Suzie out and follow on social media. All those things, likes and follows and retweets, all that stuff helps. And then, of course, support what we're doing here. If you go to GrahamElwood.com, you see my Patreon. You can go to Rokfin.com/GrahamElwood. All my tour dates, December 13th, Ron Placone and I are in Ventura. The 14th, we're in Hollywood. And we have a bunch of 2020 tour dates, so go to GrahamElwood.com for all of that. Taylor, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule today to talk about Suzie's One versus 5i campaign.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for supporting this campaign and being willing to stream it on your channel every Sunday. That's really appreciated. I do want to make note real quick too. A part of this campaign is also about education and about learning more about these intelligence agencies. So if you are interested, and I encourage everybody to really seek out information about these agencies and how they operate, please go to Suzie's YouTube channel. That is Suzie, SUZI, the number 3, the letter D on YouTube. And there are 10 episodes where she just describes and talks about their various methods. So I encourage you all to check that out as well. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
For sure. And I'll add to that, just when you learn about how they try to divide and conquer, what the tactics they use, you see, I mean, they can infiltrate your phone. I've seen this, even on my own live streams, people come in and try to hijack and start big fights, and that's part of their tactics. And some of these people, I have to wonder, maybe they're just nuts or they're just causing problems, but maybe it's the intelligence community trying to, because I'm building a community of people who come to my live stream and progressives who want to find change and solution, and someone comes in and tries to hijack it and start fights and get people divided. Just remember, that's a tactic. They have been doing this for a long time. They did this in the 60s and 70s to divide and conquer, the civil rights movement, the anti-Vietnam movement. This is how they do this. So if you're involved in any sort of activism, be leery of somebody that comes in and starts causing problems, even if they seem like they're the most down with the cause. So the more you get educated on their actual tactics, and I can tell you to the viewers, when you watch these videos or you watch Suzie's live streams, they're backing everything up with leaked documents showing these are their tactics. So now we're better prepared because we, as I've said this before on this show, you all viewers, you're all political vigilantes. We are up against billionaires with, they control all the media, they control all the message, they hire these independent and private intelligence companies. So it is up to us to get as educated as we can, and then we can deal with we can see their tactics coming now once we know what's going on, and then we can get our message out.
To build off of that, though, it's important to remember that all of these intelligence operatives, they're trained by the same people. They receive the same training, and they're also trained with the same manual. So their tactics, if you know of them, they're not difficult to spot. So that's why education is so important when it comes to the intelligence communities and how they want to target people, because, again, you can spot it if you know what to look for.
Yep. So get educated, everybody. Support Suzie. Watch these videos. And then as you do your own activism in your own communities, online or in person, you'll be able to recognize this better. And this is how we will defeat them. So this is how we're going to make Gotham great again. Thank you so much, Taylor. And mad props to Suzie for everything you're doing. And again, like, subscribe, and share these videos. YouTube, which is owned by Google, which has been working hand in glove with the CIA since 2010 or 11. If you read When WikiLeaks Met Google, that's a fine book to read. It explains all of that. So that's why when you subscribe, even though when they unsubscribe you, all those little things help. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the show. And thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.